Reality is 100% of us business owners exit at some point, and a lot of times it's a result of a devastating D, right? So you have a divorce, or you have a disagreement with a partner, you have a disability, disease diagnosis, or death. And in that instance, most of the companies never survive, right? There's a fire sale, there's litigation.
That was Scott Garrison, founder and CEO of Planned Exits, LLC. Scott Garrison is the founder and CEO of Planned Exits, which assists business owners in unlocking the wealth of their most valuable asset. Mr. Garrison was formerly the co-owner of Stria, Lightspeed Systems, and the co-founder of ACN Communications, which he began his entrepreneurial career back in 1991 at the age of 27. Scott has experienced 6 business exits of his own and believes it's time for disruption in the mergers and acquisitions industry. Scott is a 1987 graduate of CSUB's School of Business. He has served on the board for the Bakersfield Police Activities League, otherwise known as PAL, past president of the Executive Association of Kern County, and the past chairman of the Greater Bakersfield Chamber of Commerce. Scott's wife, Leslie Garrison, is the superintendent of Fruitville School District, and they are most proud of parenting 4 amazing children and spoiling their 4 grandchildren. Scott's hobbies include going to the gym, fishing, closing big deals, traveling, live music, mentoring others, and the following of Jesus. We welcome Scott on today to discuss his new business, Planned Exits, which he is the founder and CEO of. We had a nice conversation. It was interesting to see his perspective on what value he can bring to the community with respect to helping businesses plan for their exit and then also in the exiting process itself. Sounds like he has surrounded himself with a good team of professionals to assist in the process. And if anyone is interested in checking out the new company, visit the website at plannedexits.com.
Welcome back to the Our 2 Cents podcast, the show where your local professionals sit down with an array of guests to hear their story and impart some wisdom for both business and life-improving skills. This is your place to hear business and community leaders discuss relevant topics that matter to you.
And welcome back to the Our 2 Cents podcast. This is your host, Kyle Jones. I'm sitting down here with a familiar face, both as a friend and a past guest, and that is Scott Garrison. We're here to talk about something different, though. He has started a new company, which, if you know Scott, is no surprise. And so we're going to get into the details of what that is and what services he's going to provide here in our community. But just a quick little reminder, we have been about 3 weeks or so since our last episode has been released. We are kind of going through some, structural changes on how we do things here, but we're going to still keep posting episodes as they come up, and eventually going to have kind of a somewhat new structure and format we're excited to share with you, and hopefully that will be here in the next month or two. But in the meantime, Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Kyle. Good to be here.
Yeah, it is always good to see you. We've been friends for quite a while now, so I'm always intrigued and interested in your entrepreneurial spirit and the adventures that you like to take in that regard. Was that part of the reason or the catalyst to you wanting to start a new business at the ripe young age of, what are you, 50 now, 45?
Just turned 60.
Yeah, I knew that. Yeah.
But who counts?
Yeah, no one's counting. So that, that is a later age to start a new business, right? And I think you have to have that entrepreneurial spirit to be confident enough to do that. So is your past entrepreneurial experiences, was that a catalyst to wanting to do this, or kind of walk me to how we got where we are today?
Yeah, well, 100%. I feel like I have entrepreneurial DNA. And started my first company at the ripe age of 27 back in 1991. I was the co-founder of ACN Communications with my partner, Jim Bowman, and have been through 6 different exits on my own. I've always been intrigued by the mergers and acquisitions industry. For many years, I've been saying my final chapter is going to be helping business owners get full value out of their typically one and only exit.
Right. 6 is not normal, right? Not obviously normal. That's a bad word. Not typical.
Yeah, I'm kind of abnormal in a lot of ways.
Or atypical.
Atypical is probably a healthier word.
Yeah, there we go. So what did you, I don't know how detailed you want to get into before we start talking about the new company, but what experiences did you have, or what did you learn in those 6 different, because while it's atypical, I imagine that has given you a great foundation to starting this company and having that experience and that exposure. Can you walk through maybe some of them and tell us what you learned in each one, or what you would have done differently? Because I think, for people listening, that might be something, pitfalls to watch out for.
Yeah, and honestly, that's why I wanted to start this business, because having lived through 6 exits, certainly not all of them being perfect, there are plenty of pitfalls that come along the way. And again, most people spend their entire life building their company, and they don't spend a lot of time thinking about how they're eventually going to exit. So I feel like I've experienced firsthand many pitfalls, many things to look out for, and many things to prepare for, because it's an emotional experience to let go of your baby, especially if you're a founder and a single owner and the CEO, and that's what you've done all your life. It's like, okay, what do you do now that you're not working 60 hours a week? And what is your identity outside of your business?
So that you bring an interesting point, and I don't think I know the answer to this, even though I've known you for a long time. But in any of your past ventures, were you the sole owner, or do you always have partners?
No, I was always the minority interest
Okay.
Partner. Typically, I had 2 to 3 partners. Yeah, anywhere from 10% to 35% ownership in 6 different companies.
Okay. And so, in your opinion, does it change how you will advise future clients if it's a solo owned business versus a partnership?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there's different valuations on companies, and a lot of people don't even know what those value drivers are. So I've invested in a system called Value Builder System, which is a platform that helps me get a baseline assessment of where the company currently is and a estimated valuation. So, yeah, definitely the advice is different, right? Probably the easiest engagement is with the sole owner, because the more people that you have involved in the ownership of the company, the more personalities and the more likelihood you have for disagreement.
And so let's start with a situation where it's a exit for a company that has partners, whether it's a corporation with many shareholders or LLC with multiple members or general partnership, whatever the legal entity is. Are you hired by that entity as a whole to assist, or are you typically envision yourself being hired by one of the involved members parties to kind of negotiate on their behalf?
Yeah, more often than not, I will represent the majority owner and become their trusted advisor, right?
Okay.
And coach them through this entire process that includes an exit. And the reality is, Kyle, is that one thing that I've learned from firsthand experience is that most people are not well planned. The reality is 100% of us business owners exit at some point. And a lot of times it's a result of a devastating D, right? So you have a divorce, or you have a disagreement with a partner, you have a disability, disease diagnosis, or death. Mm-hmm. And in that instance, most of the companies never survive, right? There's a fire sale, there's litigation. It's a big mess because there was no plan.
Right.
So that's what I'm trying to do, is get out in front of it and maybe change the industry a little bit and disrupt it and say, hey, even if you don't plan on exiting for 2 to 10 years from now, let's plan on how to exit at maximum value at the right timing on your terms.
Yeah, I don't know, I don't have any obviously firsthand experience with that, but when I do estate plans for clients, living their trust, for example, and they have a business, that usually is a topic that comes up is that, what is the future like with selling your practice or dental practice, whatever it ends up being. And oftentimes it's kind of like a deer in headlights look. It's like, I don't know. Or if I talk to clients that own a company with somebody else, I'm like, do you guys have like a buy-sell agreement or like any life insurance? Like and then it's just like, I don't think they think of it too often. Yeah. Is that common?
Very common. I mean, most people have started their companies from the ground up. They've experienced what we call entrepreneurial terror, where they weren't sure how they were going to make payroll or, how they were even going to provide for their own families. And then even in the fast growth stage of the business, you're so caught up in your day-to-day activities that you don't give a whole lot of consideration to what the future looks like. So it is not uncommon to walk in and meet with a business owner that does not have a buy-sell agreement or a family trust or any real plan on what they're going to do with the business and what the succession plan looks like.
Getting to this new business, which we haven't even mentioned the name, it's called Planned Exits, which I have sitting here looking at your card. And I know we're audio only, but it is a pretty cool logo. So those who want to go check it out, it's www.plannedexits.com. Is your client going to be somebody that's in the start of their careers? in the middle of their career or actually at the end of their career, and you're actually going to facilitate the exit process? Or is it more of planning for that exit, or is it all the above?
Probably all of the above, but the majority of the people I'm talking to are in my age range.
Okay.
I just turned 60, right? I was born in 1964, which was the tail end of the baby boomers, which are retiring at, the quantity of 10,000 per day. So there is going to be a mass exodus in the coming years, and, a transition of trillions of dollars worth of enterprise value from one owner to the next. So I'm hoping the timing is good.
If now is the time. Is this a new industry? Is this a old industry? Is this something that's, because for me, when I know we talked about this, months and months ago, and kind of talking a little bit about it, and I was excited to see what you're doing. But to me, it was something I really never heard of. I didn't know that there was it made sense that there was a market for it, because I understand how, what happens in businesses, but I didn't know there was a niche for what you were bringing to the table. Is it?
Yeah,
talk a little bit about that.
It's actually a career, right?
Okay.
There's a couple of industries. One is EPI, Exit Planning Institute, and the other is BEI, which is Business Enterprise Institute. And ironically, their website is exitplanning.com,
okay,
which is very close to mine.
Planned
which
Exit.
You flip it around, plannedexits.com. Right. But it's a bona fide industry. And like almost every other venture that I've taken on and become a partner in, Kyle, I kind of watch what happens in the tier 1 markets. So what's happening in New York and Chicago and LA and elsewhere, and figure out which horse wins. And then I place my bet on that horse in a smaller market like Bakersfield in Kern County. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the industry's been around for, at least a dozen years. I'm in the process of...
it's still relatively new.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
it is. I mean, there's been business brokers around for a long time, but the idea of just exit planning is somewhat new and novel, but yet been around for a decade in the larger markets.
And it may have been, like I said, the brokers that you're talking about, I think that's something most business owners or people in business are familiar with that terminology. But I think from at least reading the back of your card and talking to you a little about this is a more kind of larger encompassing service, right? It's not just maybe like strictly the valuation, but like how to get there, maybe how to deal with partners and how to strategize ahead of time before you get there. So to me, that's the part that seems kind of new, or at least this is more maybe all encompassing than someone just brokering a sale, for example.
Yeah, it's intended to be a more holistic approach.
That's what I was looking for.
And something that's more transparent, right? So traditionally, the way the deals have got done that I've been involved with, you have quiet conversations and make sure nobody's listening, and somebody talks you into signing a 3-year exclusivity agreement, and they get 10% of the entire transactional value of the deal, whether you find the buyer yourself. So it's all kind of this hush, don't let any of the employees find out or they'll all quit. And I don't think that's the right approach. I think there's a lot of blind spots when everything's in a big rush, in a big hurry, and everything's contingent on a success fee, right? So the broker doesn't get paid unless a deal gets done. Mm-hmm. Mine is more of a proactive, consultative approach. Let's talk about what this looks like, and let's have a runway of maybe 2 years, and let's do this one exit the right way at maximum value and on your terms, and hopefully at an age where you still have the health to enjoy retirement and go see God's creation and spend the time with the grandkids and do all the fun things that you probably should rather be doing at this stage in life.
Yeah, and I've noticed that when I see businesses that are either getting transitioned or one partner's buying out another partner, it's usually in a litigious sense, not always litigated, but at least it's heading that route. You have one party hiring a CPA to do evaluation, another one hiring someone else to do evaluation. You're trying to, one partner's trying to downplay the value of it, the other one's trying to, artificially inflate the value of the company, and it's just like kind of games and stuff that go back and forth. And I hear you're talking about a little something different. This is a more proactive, transparent approach in evaluating a company and planning for an exit. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's very fair to say. And again, another firsthand experience, right? My exit from Lightspeed Systems was less than desirable.
You mind talking about that a little bit? Just to kind of confidential. I'm sure you have some clauses.
I believe in forgiveness, right? So I try not to hold any grudges, and it was a very painful and very expensive experience. At last tally, I believe it was roughly $500,000 in legal expenses, and it was tied into a divorce and an ownership, and it was litigated and contentious and painful, and I wouldn't wish that upon anybody. So I would encourage all business owners to find a better way to solve a disagreement in a partnership, and there are ways to finance buyouts, whether it be through a SBA loan or whatever, or bringing in another party, or just having the existing remaining partners buy out in a amicable way the partner that's leaving. So yeah, it can get expensive if it gets ugly.
It is, and I see that a lot in the work that I do, and I try to have an approach when I tell clients. It's like, look, only people that are going to make money if you take, and it's not just in business. It's family law. It's with estate planning. The only people who are going to make money are the attorneys. If you don't kind of have a well thought out, planned out approach. And so with estate planning, the example is you'd be proactive, do a trust, get everything in place so your children, whoever those people may be, can administer your estate privately, quickly, inexpensively at your passing, or you go through probate. And it's this long drawn out process. Attorneys make all the money. Same thing with business, right? Same thing with divorce. It's like, hey, you guys can either amicably come up to a business decision that's going to work out for everyone, or you're going to send a bunch of attorneys' kids through college for the next 4 or 5 years and litigating this. And so it sounds, and I say that all the time, and I say that because I see it. And it's not like I don't think attorneys have a role. I am one. And there's not time where you have to litigate, and there's not time you have to, there's sometimes where it has to be adversarial. But if you can avoid that, that you're just going to be in a better situation. At least that's my perspective. And it sounds like you probably agree.
Yeah, that's a fantastic perspective, especially coming from an attorney.
Right.
I'm proud of you, Kyle.
Well, life's too short, right?
I agree with that. And I have other attorneys that I work with that are proactive, right? And they try to avoid the litigation and the knockdown drag-outs. And there are some great attorneys out there, including yourself, who help me and my wife with our family trust. Yeah,
to me, it's just it's a way you approach things. And I think one of the things to, if you want to take that advice of what I just said or utilize that, I think one of the things that you have to do, and you can comment on this whether you agree or not, is to take the emotion out of it. And I know that's hard to do, especially in family situations, whether someone's been wrong for whatever reason. It's hard to take that emotional baggage, if you will, out of the equation. But if you can separate that from the issues, then you can see there's a path forward. And so, that's at least kind of how I look at things.
Yeah. One of the things I have bulleted on the back of my business card is family business mediator. Right?
Oh,
and
there you go.
A lot of times there are handing down the business to the second generation or the third generation, and the statistics are not favorable when it comes to businesses surviving second and third generation. And those are some tough conversations, right? So being able to facilitate the difficult conversations might be able to keep Thanksgiving intact. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. If it's the dad that's the founder of the business and he's got some kids that work in the business and some that don't, I mean, it's tough to come up with a fair agreement on who gets what. And I think it's well advised to bring in a third party to help facilitate those conversations so it doesn't ruin the dynamics of the family.
And that's where ideally you come in.
Yep, I could play that role.
And so who is your ideal clients as you're starting this new venture? Who are you looking to work with /for in helping them in this next chapter?
Yeah, I think the underserved market are the businesses that are anywhere between $2 and $10 million in enterprise value.
Okay.
And when I say that,
I was going to ask, go a little bit. What does that mean? I mean,
and this is going to probably get technical and
sure.
get over other people's heads, but
we can break it down.
Most valuations are done based off a multiple of EBITDA,
mm-hmm.
and that's an acronym for earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. Pretty much equivalent to the cash flow
mm-hmm.
Of the company.
Okay.
Right. So that's typically the valuation, and depending on what type of industry you're in and the 8 value drivers that I spoke about before, it can shift that multiple from anywhere from 3 times EBITDA to 10 times EBITDA on the high end.
So it's a big range.
It is. And that's literally what I'm selling is you can bring me in, we can do a baseline assessment. I can show you the valuation based off the questionnaire that you responded to, And then I can show you the 8 drivers that we can help manipulate to increase the multiple of the value, in addition to increase the multiplier of the EBITDA, right? So there's a lot of levers that can be pulled. And most business owners are caught up in the day-to-day, so they're not ever looking at their company through the lens of a prospective buyer. And that's how I try to change the game. It's like, look, if we're going to prepare for sale in the next couple of years, we need to try to look at your company as a potential buyer. Will see it and maximize your exit so you can go off and do whatever you want to do.
Now, is that kind of the whole idea of you're either working on your business or in your business, and you have to strike that balance because you're working too much in your business, then the future or the growth could get stagnant, or if you're working too much on that, then you're not servicing your current customers or clients, right? And so that's the balance I think you need to strike. Is that kind of...
Yeah, and most of these small, solely owned businesses, there's not a lot of strategic thought on how to grow it and how to pull the levers to increase the value of the business. It's just, the daily grind. Let's provide services to our clients, try to keep them happy, put out the fires on the daily, and it's typically reactive rather than proactive.
Literally was just going to say that exact word is reactive. Seems like people who are even trying to do things in their business, it tends to be reactive. It's like, oh, I gotta talk to an attorney because this happened, or I need to get with my CPA, which is good that you're working with professionals, right? Whether it be a CPA or attorney, someone in insurance, or whatever their specialty is. But it's usually it's reactive to something that's a problem as opposed to kind of getting out ahead of it.
Yeah, and it's kind of a common nature with humans is that we just don't prepare for what's coming. We just react to what's happened. And, a lot of times that turns into repeatable fire drills that don't necessarily need to take place with better planning.
Yeah, or bad decisions, right? Which I guess would be, part and parcel of the fire drill that keeps repeating itself.
Right.
And so are you, I kind of see it. You kind of talked a little bit about from the beginning to the middle of someone's business career or to the actual exit, but as you're starting, because this is a new company, right? Tell me exactly when you started. When were doors open? It's relatively new, correct?
Yeah, literally, I just launched Planned Exits on my father's heavenly 82nd birthday on February 2nd to honor him. Again, I give him a lot of the credit for giving me that entrepreneurial spirit. My dad owned his own companies for most of his career, and I think he kind of passed that along to me. So I wanted to honor my dad in a favorable way. And then my wife and I went on a couple-week Caribbean cruise to celebrate my 60th birthday. So I was, by design, have not been busy until we just returned last week. And now I'm ready to hit the ground running.
I was going to say hit the ground running.
Get some more clients on the list. And again, I'm at this point in my career, Kyle, I'm looking forward to being a solopreneur. I've been involved with large organizations with over 100 employees a couple times, and I experienced a pandemic that I think changed our world in a lot of different ways. And I think a lot of people went a little COVID crazy, and some people got COVID lazy because our government decided to send checks to people for staying home and doing nothing. And it became very difficult to rely on people to show up to work every day and put in a full day's work for a fair day's pay. And I'm like, I'm tired of dealing with HR issues. I think I'll just do something on my own and be responsible to myself on the daily. And
you mentioned partner earlier, but you don't have a partner in this venture. Is that correct?
I do not.
That's what I thought.
And that's, if I'm being fair, there's probably something in my ego that wants me to prove to myself that I can be the guy, right? The founder, the CEO, and the ultimate decision maker.
It's going to prove an answer to yourself on whether or not that's something you're capable of doing, right? One way or the other, because you have no one else to, not blame, for lack of a better word, but yourself.
100%.
Either good or bad.
Nobody to blame but me if it goes well or not. But, one theme that I think holds steady for most entrepreneurs is failure is not an option, right? If you have that self-doubt walking in and walk in like, well, we'll see how it goes, you're probably not going to make it.
Yeah, you know how it's going to go.
Got to go for it.
Yeah.
And another good thing about being a solopreneur, I don't have a lot of outside expenses either, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of what I was asking, so we're a month in, 6 weeks in, I know you took a little trip before you come back and hit the ground running, but what does that initial client look like? Is it somebody who is, like I said, just starting and you want to get them prepared for what the future is going to hold? Is it somebody in the middle to start that 2 to 3, 4, 5 year exit strategy? Or are you ready to take on a client who says, hey, I'm planning my exit. I need to go right now. Or is it all three?
Probably the latter. Somebody that's starting to think about retirement and they don't know where to start.
Okay.
That's an ideal client. And I'm talking to a half dozen of those right now. And as you can imagine, all of them want to keep everything confidential and remain anonymous.
Of course.
And that will typically be the case in this industry. Yeah, they typically don't want it to be publicized that they're thinking about selling, and nobody really wants to talk about it until it's done. And the sad reality, Kyle, is that depending on what study you read, there was one study by one of the big four accountancies that was pretty exhaustive, and they learned that 75% of business owners that exited their companies had profound regrets within 1 year of doing so.
In doing it, or the value, or all the above?
All of the above,
okay.
Right? And one of the things that I think most people don't give a lot of thought to is that typically the buyer will want the owner to stay on and have an employment contract for 12, 24, 36 months. Well, it doesn't take too much thinking to realize that somebody that's been their own boss for the past 40 years doesn't become an exceptional employee.
Doesn't play well with others, right?
But most people haven't considered that.
Right.
And very few deals are 100% cash at close and just a walkaway situation. I mean, there's a rare exception, right? Sometimes there's a strategic acquisition or there's a health issue with the founder or whatever, but
you're right.
More often than not, they want you to stay on board and ease through that transition and talk to the clients, keep things smooth with the employees to keep everything operating as smoothly as possible.
Because retention is key in a lot of these. I mean, or maybe the biggest factor, right? I don't. You tell me, but
yeah, more often than not, that's written into the asset purchase agreement, right? That there's earnouts.
Based on certain retention?
There's certain amount of holdbacks, or there's earnouts based off of the revenue that's continuing to be generated, because nobody wins if somebody buys the company, the founder leaves, and 50% of the clients walk out the door at the same time.
Right.
That's a lose-lose situation.
And so how do you address that situation, knowing that, hey, someone who's been self-employed for 40 years, probably not going to be the best employee, yet that person is needed to help the retention, which is good for both parties. So what do you do in that, or how do you advise in that situation, or how do you account for that? Or is it just something you bring to the table and make sure everyone understands that that's an issue that most people don't think about?
Yeah, it's one of those things you need to prepare for in advance, right? Figure out the strengths of the founder. And if it is the client relationships, I mean, have them focus solely on that. Don't start asking them to do a lot of things that they're not good at and don't want to do at this stage of their career, right? So it's like, let's have some realistic expectations and put some guardrails around the confines of what that founder is expected to do on the daily. And typically, long goodbyes are not great, right? So if you can, if the buyer's asking for a 36-month employment contract, to negotiate that down to 12 months, knowing that your owner is ready to go see the world or spend more time with the grandkids or whatever,
the reason for selling,
learn how to play golf, or whatever that motive is that's pulling them into retirement instead of being pushed into retirement. That's an important factor too. It's like a lot of the founder owners, I mean, 90% of their identity is wrapped up into their business, and often their surname is on the wall. In the name of the company. And it's like, what do? I really didn't have a lot of friends outside of this company here. What am I going to do with this spare time? And just being able to mentally prepare for that. And a lot of times it includes the spouse too, right? It's like, what are their goals and aspirations? They put up with a lot for the last 40 years. How does the last chapter of life look like together?
Do you see in these negotiations or in these exits, key employees of the company being a critical part of it, where somebody's wanting to exit and say, but hey, these people have to be protected, or these are, these guys, gals, or whatever, whoever they may be, can I help me build this and are integral, and so I'm not selling it if you plan on Xing those out, or they have to be, is that
Yeah, that's often part of the plan is either have retention bonuses or sometimes it will be the key employees that actually become the party that acquires the interest of the founder, right? I mean, that's probably the easiest succession plan is how the people that are doing the heavy lifting on the day
already in there, yeah.
And a lot of times they don't have the money, right, Kyle? So we'll work with a SBA lender or traditional banking financing and find a way. And sometimes it's an installment sale over a period of time, right? So it's not a huge chunk of money at close. It's a 7-year buyout. There are many ways to skin a cat when it comes to exiting a business, and most people just don't exhaust all the opportunities that are accessible to
different resources.
Correct.
And do you feel like you have a good understanding of SBA? Because I know SBA has gone through a lot of changes since COVID. It was a unique kind of time and the way that money was being lent. And has it kind of gone back to the way it was pre-COVID, or is it still, more lax, than?
Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to be an SBA lender expert, but I talk to one on the regular, a guy named Matt Damien. Actually brothers with my former partner, Jim Damien.
I was going to say, yeah.
And he knows all the rules, but even in the industry, and as I'm working towards certifications and exit planning, they're talking about SBA being so much more friendly to acquisitions. It used to be back in the day, it had to be 100%, and the owner, can't be there after 12 months. There was some real strict guidelines on how you could use SBA funding, but now they've loosened those up, and I think
because that was always the adage, right? Was like, I mean, at least from my perspective, is like, we had the SBA small business, like, what small business are they helping? Like, because it's been very difficult to access those funds or to get through that bureaucracy or red tape, you want to call it. But that's good to hear that it's getting loosened up from that perspective.
Yeah, and another firsthand experience, we were able to use an SBA loan to buy the property that we had at Stria, and a lot of people are aware of, us selling to Bitwise Industries, which turned out to be devastating, and they filed for bankruptcy.
Right.
The good news in that is that myself and my two partners, we held the property in the building under a separate LLC, which was
nice.
not part of the acquisition. And in fact, I think they even ran a newspaper article this last weekend about how the Girl Scouts acquired that property and that commercial real estate from us,
the entity that held it.
Correct.
Now, is that something that you, from past experience, learned that to keep that separate and make that not part of the sale, or is that just the way it worked out, or how,
Yeah, I mean, industry stats are typically 80% of the businesses sold do not include real estate.
Okay.
A lot of times it's the smaller business ones, the ones that might be a better fit for Sunbelt, where you're selling a donut shop or a
cafe,
a tire and alignment shop or lube shop, whatever, something that's kind of retail and has real estate associated with the value of that company.
That's more typical.
That is atypical.
Oh, that's atypical.
That's about 20% of the time business transactions include real estate, and 80% of the time that they don't. And a lot of times it's because we're smart enough as business owners to go to an attorney like yourself and who will encourage us to hold the property under a different LLC for liability,
and then lease it back to the company.
Correct.
Right. Yeah. So the sale of the real estate is atypical, but it is typical to be the type of industries that you discussed: the tire shop, the donut shop, some mom and pop retail. That's where you see that 20%. Did I hear you correctly on that?
Yeah, on the smaller transactions, that's typically the value that's actually in the business.
Okay,
is the real estate and the building and its location itself, because a lot of those smaller businesses, I mean, sometimes they've created a job more so than they've created a company, which is great for somebody else that's looking to do something different and own their own thing. Most of my opportunities are not retail related. Again, in the kind of underserved market of the 2 million to 10 million enterprise value.
And that's not going to be retail typically.
Not typically.
Which is not a bad thing. It is what it is. Do you find that, so from my perspective as an attorney, sometimes when I have a new client or I work on a new case, it's not like I have to be a jack of all trades, but there's a lot of things I have to learn in order to effectively represent somebody. Even though my specialty is the law, nonetheless, I still have to know a lot about other things to kind of advise somebody to make the appropriate decision. Ultimately, it's their decision, but they look to me for advice on how to make that decision. with you in this venture, I'm thinking kind of it's a very similar thing. I mean, there's certain things that you have to know, but you kind of have to get in bed with that industry and kind of get intimate with what they do and what the market looks like. And is that something you're kind of having to do, or you're thinking you're needing to do, or you don't really need to know about what they do? Or
Yeah, I don't need to fully understand the industry to be beneficial to the owner. And again, I kind of am serving the jack of all trades advisor, maybe the quarterback of the entire transaction, but I can help the business owner compile a lot of information that they're going to need, right? So you're going to need 3 years of P&L statements. You're going to need 3 years balance sheets, 3 years of tax returns. And then we start talking about, okay, well, you've been running a lot of personal expenses through your companies, in which causes your EBITDA not to look that great. Maybe we need to show a little more taxable income. And keep in mind, that's pretty normal, right? For small businesses, the government actually gives us some laws, tax laws that are favorable to being a small business owner. And not necessarily that you have to quit doing that, but we need to identify those as add backs before we come up with the EBITDA number as part of the multiple. But I can help set up a data vault and collect all this information over a period of time. Because another thing that I've witnessed firsthand, which is not fun, is somebody will give you a price in a letter of intent, and then they'll try to claw back from that number based off of anything that's unfavorable. So I participated in kind of being the lead guy on a deal, and I was the one and only salesperson for the company. And the prospective buyer was looking at our financials from the previous month, and it's like, oh, your revenue slipped in February. I'm like, yeah, you remember when you were taking up about 90% of my week?
I wasn't working.
Getting all this information. I wasn't selling during that time.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we're going to have to reduce our offer because of your poor, less than stellar performance in February. So, I mean, another one of those gotchas, right, that you don't really see coming. You kind of feel like you have a deal and that's the number, but there's some games that are played, and that's one thing that I want to prepare business owners for. There's professional poker players that have been playing this exit game all their lives, and typically this is the first time you sat at the table to play. So let me educate you on what to look out for.
And avoiding the pitfalls, right?
Yeah, let me protect you from that, more importantly.
Right. Because you brought up a good point. This is people who are actually out doing these acquisitions. This is not new to them. That's what they do. They're looking for value. They're looking to get something for less than the value. They've already, correct me if I'm wrong, in my perspective, they know what the valuation is. They're just trying to convince you it's less than what it is so they can buy it at a lesser rate. I mean, is that
the old adage of, buy low, sell high?
Right.
That's how everybody makes their margin, right? That's how everybody makes their money. So, of course, the people that are on the buyer's side representing them are trying to minimize the cash outflow from their buyer. So, yeah, I mean, there's some negotiations that take place, and a lot of people just are not mentally prepared for that. They'll just like, I'm not going to deal with this anymore. Call the deal off. Like, well, maybe that's not our best play, but let me warn you of what's likely going to happen when we get to the point that where we're actually going to trigger a sell.
And so this may be a stupid question, but I was told
such thing.
I was going to say I was told there isn't. But so someone using your services, would it make a transaction harder because you are bringing almost a level playing field to the seller?
Well, I like to position it as the deal that gets done will be the right one.
Okay.
Right? Which is not always the case when it's solely a success fee. So most of us have gone through some type of real estate transaction and buying a primary residence, right? And you sign the deal with the real estate agent. Well, that real estate agent doesn't make one penny until it goes through escrow closes, and the money is wired to your account, right? So similar situation with the current M&A environment. It's typically based off a pretty sizable, 10%-ish success fee. So since that broker doesn't get paid until a deal gets done, the deal that they've got in hand with a prospective buyer is always the best deal, right? And this is a great deal, and we need to get this done,
right?
So I can get paid,
right?
And my approach is, again, more proactive. It's like the old Fram oil filter commercial, right? You can either pay me now or pay them later.
Right.
So
That's a great. Yeah.
I just aged myself with that commercial.
But it's
and I'm
true.
glad you're old enough to remember it.
Yep.
But it's that. It's like, let's wait and let's take our time and let's make sure that we're ready if the right deal comes along to do a deal quickly, if it is the right deal. But if it's not, I'm not contingent on a success fee. It's let's see what else is out there.
So you have to you're preparing clients not to take the first offer that comes in, the first deal that walks in the door if it's not the right deal.
I wouldn't say that, but I mean, we will have a good understanding of what the valuation of the company is, and we'll know if that offer is a premium one or not.
And then it's ultimately up to the seller to decide whether or not they want to.
Yeah, sometimes it's timing too, right?
Right.
Well, can we build this thing up a little bit bigger and maybe get another turn on the multiple of EBITDA? Maybe, but you're really tired of doing this, and you've had 3 bad days of work in a row, and you're ready to pull the trigger. So we're prepared.
Yep.
Let's get a deal done.
And so, do you have a even though you're the CEO, the janitor, the everything, from what I'm hearing, you're going to have although not partners, you're probably going to have some sort of team in place to work with clients as issues come up, right? Like, we need to talk to CPA or someone on SBA. I've got a guy. We need to talk to. Is that am I hearing you right on that?
I've been talking to many trusted advisors. I had coffee with the business law attorney yesterday.
That's what I was going to say. You're probably setting up
I've talked to John Duffield and several other CPAs that have been around for a while and knowledgeable, and that I know, like, and trust, and that I feel very comfortable in recommending. A lot of times, these small businesses, they're fairly large organizations. They do $5 million in revenue, so they have a CPA and they have audited financials. And if they have that trusted advisor there, great. We'll work with them.
Right.
If they don't, then I'm going to have a list of people. I've been in this town since I was 5 years old, so in the last 55 years of being an entrepreneur, I've met most of the movers and shakers in the community, and the ones with great reputations and those to steer clear of.
Yeah, and I'm assuming that includes maybe something like an escrow company and very in private lending, not only SBA, but just the whole attorney, CPAs, the gamut of when you're going to need to put this piece together. And is insurance part of that equation too? Is that?
Yeah, I mean, you start with wealth by preservation, right, and minimizing risk. So a lot of times, and you talked about key employees too, right, or different partnerships and buy-sell agreements. Key man life is pretty important.
Good, yeah. So
insurance often plays into the equation.
And so, in talking this out more, I'm getting a better, at least from my perspective, of what it is you're providing and what it is you're attempting to serve in the community. And to me, it's really underserved because, again, going back to clients I met with doing their estate planning, A, they're not thinking about it, and B, even if they are thinking about it, some people don't know where to turn. And not to, promote our podcast too much, but I will a little bit.
You should.
And that's kind of what I felt like we wanted to build it in doing this podcast is we want to have different perspectives and opinions from different professionals in the community that have been in the community for a long time, that have a good reputation. And so, for me, if someone listens to the podcast and they may have a question that's not legal related, but there's another guy on the show that that John Duffield isn't a CPA, and then I don't mind being that conduit and saying, yeah, absolutely, I've worked with him for decades. He has a great reputation, and go talk to him. If it works out, great. If not, I have no skin in the game, right? But it's just being a resource, and so I see you as being that, like, a step up of what we're trying to do is a resource, and a trusted, valued resource, and to me, that's clear from talking to you, and if I'm wrong, please correct me. But that's kind of what I'm envisioning.
Spot on.
Yeah.
I love giving referrals, and typically it's people that have been in business for quite some time and have built a reputation, and I know them on a personal level, and I know if I refer them a client, they're going to do right by them. And if they can't be of service, they'll point them in the right direction, right? So, I have no problem in somebody that's got a legal issue, pointing them to Kyle Jones. And if that's your area of expertise, you'll take them on as a client. If it's not, you'll point them to an attorney who can better serve them. Yep.
And I couldn't agree more. And that's finding the right fit for the client. And I get referrals from, I've been in the community my whole life. I left briefly for undergrad and law school, but came right back after and started my own practice. And so I get referrals all the time from people just because I've known, been in the community, they've known my father, whatever. And I love that they think of me, but it's like, hey, I don't do divorce, but let me give you a couple of guys that do, or, I'm sorry, I don't do bankruptcy, but let me put you in the hands of somebody that does, that I know that works well, has a good reputation, so on and so forth. And so that to me is important. And almost, getting those referrals are nice, even though, I'm not directly benefiting from it, but it to me is a kind of a pat on the back that they trust me enough to refer someone to me, regardless if I do it or not. But knowing that, like you said, they'll get them in the right spot if that's where they need to go.
Very well put. Yeah. I mean, one of my lifetime verses is there's no wrong way to do the right thing, right? So it's cool to get that call and say, hey, I respect you enough. Who do you recommend for X service? Yep.
Well, that's great. Let me look at the back of your card real quick, see if there's anything else I wanted to get some clarification on that we haven't covered. The straight shooter part. I think you made that pretty clear.
Well, let me expand on that, right?
Please.
So, I mean, one of the things that I have to ask up front with my clients and prospective clients is, look, if this is going to work and be healthy, and I'm going to add maximum value to you, your family, your company, your employees, you have to allow me to be 100% honest and transparent. So if your baby is ugly, you have to give me permission to tell you your baby's ugly. And I see that probably 80% of the time is somebody's neighbor's cousin told them that their company is worth X. And it's like, oh, what does he do? Oh, he's a fireman.
Right.
Well, what does he know about company value? He read a book or saw something on the internet or whatever. Yeah, so probably 80% of business owners think that their company is worth more than it is. I mean, part of the value builder system is that we can dial that in and get a more realistic perspective of what the valuation is. But at the end of the day, everything's worth what somebody else is willing to pay for it.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. If you want to, if someone's hiring you to be a yes man, that's
the wrong guy.
I mean,
I will refer you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And that's when anything. Same thing with my practice. And I mean that's just not how I'm going to operate. Doesn't mean I always know the answer, and it doesn't mean I'm going to be 100% right or 100% wrong on something. But if you're asking my opinion on something, I'm going to give it to you. Up to you what you do with it, but I'm not going to sugarcoat it.
Yeah,
and I think that's important.
I offer the free assessment, whether it be on call or in person, no obligation. And it's just that. And it's to do some discovery.
Okay.
And if I'm not the right fit and I can't help you, I'm going to be the first to tell you. I'm not going to try to sell you a service that's of no value. I mean, especially in this little big town that we live in called Bakersfield, word of mouth and referrals are probably the number one sources of business. But something else that gave me more confidence, because that's one of the things that some of my former mentor or current mentors have asked me is Kern County a big enough market? Are there enough businesses that are going to go for sale to keep you busy? And one of the silver linings that came out of the pandemic is a lot of the geographical boundaries came down, right? So I used to, at Stria, as the only salesperson, I would limit our service area to California because I didn't want to do extensive travel. I've done that in the past. It's not conducive to good family time, right? I mean, I missed too many sports events with my daughter and things with my wife and whatever. So I didn't want to do that again. But when the pandemic came around, Zoom became super popular or whatever.
You don't have to be in the air 4 days a week to.
You don't have that opportunity or the opportunity cost of being full day of travel, the flights, the hotel room, the meals, and then you have a 2-hour meeting and then you have a full day of travel and expenses again. You just have the 2-hour meeting on Zoom and it doesn't cost everybody an arm and a leg. So that became more prevalent and more acceptable. So yeah, I can take on clients from throughout the U.S. I probably will focus solely on the U.S. because I don't want to get into Canadian tax laws and
international,
right?
Yeah.
But again, most people, especially when it comes to an advisor, do business with someone that they know, like, and trust. So the vast majority of my opportunities and prospects have come from people I've known here for quite some time.
And that's obviously, I think, the way most people start. Doesn't mean that can't expand in the future, right? 3-4 years from now, you may have done some deals for someone locally because they know your name, they trust you, and you worked out for someone. Then they may have somebody that is in Utah, for example, and say, hey, you know what? I know, this guy's in Bakersfield, but I worked with him to sell mine. And then you have that, like, that referral, right? That personal touch that says, and then that may open up some doors.
I have learned over the years that local touch and feel and in-person meetings is less. a lot less important to people outside of Kern County than it is to people that are in.
Yeah.
We still have this little big town mentality, right? Where a handshake goes a long ways, and you want to be able to sit face to face with the person you're doing business with. And I'm cool with that. I mean, I'm old school.
I think I'm the same way
to do it, but
quite frankly.
I've been around technology long enough to where I can use whatever tools I need to do things remotely.
Yeah. No, I think I have clients who are the same way, and they said, we really want to sit down with you in person. I wouldn't have any other way. That's exactly I want to do it. Come on in. But I feel like I am the same way with people that I want to associate and do business with. I feel like I want to meet. It's just that the looking in someone's eyes, the body language. When you shake someone's hand, you kind of get. I don't know. There's a lot to that, and I think we're wired that way. In my opinion, I think you have to have some sort of like something. We're all wired to know that when there's BS in the air, if you kind of trust your gut, you're going to find it. You may not know why.
Not always. I had a
things may fool you, but
well-publicized event that would say that that's not always the truth, because I have this really bad habit of believing when somebody tells me something that it's true, because that's the way I operate. Sadly, the entire world is not that way.
True, but I think if one were to trust their gut, I think they can spot something that's off. Sometimes they choose to ignore it. Sometimes they accept it and but are willing to accept that risk and move forward. But I think if you really break it down, that
I will agree with you that that's much more likely to happen, to have that gut feel, if you're in person.
Yes.
Right. So you can see where the eyes go and whatever else. But people are like, you've had some unfortunate things happen to you, or I just turned 60 years old. I don't want to change the way I approach life and interact with people. I want to believe that if somebody tells me something, that they're telling me the truth, and that's the way I'm going to operate. And if I get burnt again, shame on me. But I just don't like spending a lot of time looking in the rearview mirror. Right, like to look out the windshield and know where I'm headed, and headed to better times. And I just have a lot of faith. And
nothing wrong with that.
You probably noticed that the T in planned exits is a cross.
I did.
I'm a man of faith, and after we have the conversation on what happens to your business after you depart it, if it's appropriate and the person is open to that conversation, then maybe we have a conversation about what happens to your soul when you leave this world. And we'll leave it at that. I don't try to force it on anybody, but I'm always open to engage in that conversation. You've been around me.
That's your passion. It is. I mean, like I said, nothing wrong with that. That's your passion, and it's welcoming. Some people it's not, some people it is, but it's who you are, and so no point in not being who you are.
No point in trying to be somebody you're not.
Yep.
Right.
I learned that early on in my law career, as I saw older attorneys, the way they practice and how they handle themselves with clients, or what their demeanor they carried in court. And I always thought, like, well, I need to be more aggressive and I need to do this. And then after a while, I was like, well, that's just not who I typically am. I'm pretty low key and kind of down to earth. And
you need to be Kyle Jones.
Yeah, right. And that's when I think I, learned to be more successful, and just be who I am. And then
there are plenty of people that want to do business with you exactly the way that you are.
So we'll leave it at that.
That's a beautiful thing.
All right. So got a couple exiting things, if you don't mind. I've kept you here for almost an hour. I apologize, but I
got nothing but time these days, Kyle.
I love it. Love it. Okay. Rapid fire questions. Were you giving these ahead of time, or am I catching you off guard here?
No, I think we're all right.
Okay,
cool.
I
saw the list.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure.
And this can be edited too, right? So if I just...
No, never.
Now I got pressure.
So there's one thing I will say about our podcast. We do not edit it.
Oh,
I mean, Stephen will edit it for volume issues. If someone's away from the mic, they'll make it clarity, but we don't edit it. We don't take anything out, because to me, that takes away from the conversation. I think one time we have, and that was a request of a guest, because and to be fair, it was the right call. It was the gentleman over at Cal State. He was the athletic director, and he was talking about Title IX, and he actually, part of the law, the elements of Title IX, he misquoted, and he got back to his office and he thought about it for a second, and he called us and he said, I said something completely wrong. Of course, we want to take that out because we don't want to give bad information. So something like that, we'll edit it. But yeah, the conversation that we have in this room is exactly what gets played out. And so
I'm 100% transparent.
And that's why we want to do that.
But I also don't like creating legal liabilities too. So
no, right, exactly.
If I misquote the law on something, I'll
100%.
glad that you'll consider editing that.
Yes, but we're not, just because I don't like the way I sounded or that, we don't, is what it is.
All good.
Okay. What is a quote that you live by?
I think I touched on that earlier about there's no wrong way to do the right thing. I give credit to Bill Rector, the former chief of police. I think that's where I first heard that. As far as an original quote of my own, a great idea without implementation is a wasted thought.
Okay.
How's that?
I like it. We could put a trademark on that one.
Do it.
Scott Garrison.
And that one goes back to probably like 1990.
Okay. So the young Scott, younger, I shouldn't say younger. I know this is an important question for you because I know you have a lot, but if you, you may not want to answer the one, but who would be your biggest mentor?
I've had a lot.
Knowing
Jim
you, yeah.
Bowman was great. Chris Frank from the Chamber, the CEO of the Chamber, was an awesome mentor of mine. Jim Damian, even though he's younger, he was my CEO. Brilliant guy. We're best of friends to this day. But I'm going to throw out one that you may not have heard before.
Okay.
I'm going to throw out my wife.
Oh,
Leslie Garrison.
Okay.
She's beautiful and brilliant and just my person.
Okay.
And she's very wise. I learn from her daily.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Okay. Last one. If you could be remembered for one thing, what would it be?
I get up every day with the idea of making a positive impact in somebody's life, and maybe a more eternal perspective is that I do everything in my power to help expand the future population of heaven.
Okay. So that's
my passion.
Okay.
And I get that from my father as well.
Okay.
My dad was a pastor, and
I actually didn't know that about you.
He loved the unloved, and he just genuinely cared, and he thought that the greatest gift of all was eternal life, and if he could help facilitate that and share the gospel with others, he would. Trying to follow in his footsteps.
Not bad footsteps to follow. Yeah. Scott, thank you so much for coming in. Lastly, we have just some information to give out. Planned Exits, which we have said now numerous times. Website, pretty straightforward, plannedexits.com. Email, do you mind if I give that out?
That's fine.
Okay. That's sgarrison@plannedexits.com. Social media? Are you big on that?
Facebook.
Or? Okay.
I'm starting up the business site, but don't have a lot of traction with that. But people can find me on Facebook.
Okay.
Search for Scott Garrison.
Okay.
And I'm also on LinkedIn. I think I'm like Scott Garrison 11 or something. Yeah,
LinkedIn seems like to be the business social media more of, but I don't know, man. A lot of companies are investing a lot in Instagram and
yeah,
it seems like it's the way of the future.
I've created company sites on both those, but they're brand new, so I don't have a lot of followers. And I don't know. My deal with Facebook is like, I don't want people to start unfriending me because I'm trying to sell them something. So I'm going to try to keep those separate. Right?
Yeah.
I think Facebook is, hey, where did you travel? And what do you recommend for dinner, and or places to go out to eat, or where's the live entertainment tonight?
Pictures of your kids.
Yeah. Just be able to track people and how they're doing with life and their family.
Yeah. So, I thought that for the longest time, but I'm starting to, my law office has an Instagram account, and I'm posting some content on there, but it's almost like I agree with you, but I'm looking at it more as it's like the new web page. It's somewhere because people are on it so much. It's easier for them to go to get into your bio on there to then access your web page or to get your phone number, or your email. It's almost like a virtual business card almost. The content is what it is, but
social media is here to stay.
It is, fortunately or unfortunately. But anyway, thought I'd share that. Scotty,
glad you did.
Thanks for coming in, and we'll chat soon.
Great seeing you, Kyle.
All right, take care, bud. All right,
bye.
This show has been brought to you by the Law Office of Kyle Jones, Troy Burton with the Lynn Company, CPA John Duffield, Scott Hansen Real Estate Lender, broker and investor, Dave Plivlich, President and CEO of the Marcom Group and MarcomBranding.com, and Amanda DiGiacomo, President of Atlas Financial Solutions. You've been listening to the Our 2 Cents podcast. Check out the show notes for links and more information about the show. Also visit our website at our2centspodcast.com or catch us on Instagram at Our 2 Cents Podcasts. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share with others.